ready?
I've got a couple of things to talk about.
All right, here we go. Darce, the Sports Wrap, week 5 via the Zoom style. George and Ringer here with you to talk. I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. We'll find something to discuss, George.
We've got stuff. We've got stuff.
I have to confess to everybody first. Is that okay? It's always good to cleanse the soul. You might recall over the last couple of weeks, I said I was not going to watch The Last Dance. But I knew Sunday night was the last night. And of course, that meant the end was going to come. And I wanted to see how it was going to end, where they were going to end it. And I was very surprised to find out that they got to the championship and they talked about it for about 10 minutes. And then that was it. They didn't talk about, they talked about the fact that they broke them up. But after that, I thought, well, are they going to talk about Jordan with his time with the Bobcats or whatever else? And so I did watch the last hour and I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Well, okay. I'll tell you, tonight they're going to have a show called After the Last Dance. Okay? After the Last Dance. No, I watched 3 shows or parts of the 3 shows. I took away 3 things. Number one, I watched Michael Jackson play baseball, which was really pretty remarkable. I watched Rodman wrestle with the Hulk, and then the third guy that I walked away with, because everybody knows about Phil Jackson, everybody knows about Scotty and all the rest of that, was Jerry Cruz, the general manager. And there was a relationship that went on amongst that crew, and Cruz was the one that built the team. And up to and including Jackson, he pulled him out of a Continental League.
Yeah, I saw that part of it.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting around watching, and I think, I never knew this before. No. What I got from Rodman was, there is one serious NBA character. If there ever was a character, he's got to be it. And some of his thoughts are a little bit, what do you say, disconcerting, but
that was very nice of you, George.
Yeah, he never said he was anything but other than what he is, and that's a real life character.
Well, when I turned it on, Carmen Electra was talking, and I'm like, what the heck is she doing on it? How does she fit into this? Well, then she talked about, when you're Dennis Rodman's girlfriend, life is a little interesting, and I'm like, I forgot completely about that. I was like, wow.
What other girlfriend could he have but Carmen Electra? It wasn't going to work out any other way, and it's anyway, I thought that watching these, and all of a sudden you're thinking there are stories behind the scenes, and that's for sure. And so, it was actually kind of fun to watch those things.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, I got a package in the mail today.
Oh boy.
One of my new textbooks.
Oh,
special delivery from Eli. So, the thing about, the After the Last Dance, if that's what you want to call it, today, Horace Grant absolutely basically called Michael Jordan a liar. Apparently during the show, Jordan said that it had to be Grant who leaked the Jordan rules out to everybody in the book and how they were doing whatever. And so basically Horace Grant went after Michael Jordan and said, look, he's lying. Him and his buddies, this wasn't a real documentary, because if it is, the person that the documentary is about wouldn't be in charge of it. And so I'm sure things are going to continue to come out. Horace Grant didn't like the way Pippen was portrayed in the show. I agree. I didn't really like the way he was portrayed, but this was about Michael Jordan. And, like I said, we all say things in life, and we all draw the line in the sand or whatever you want to do it. And some people live with that decisions and other people don't. And I guess maybe that's why we do a show, because there's controversy, right?
Well, that's right. And when you talk about Jerry Cruz and Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan, you are talking about some pretty emotional, psyches here. And their clashes were monumental. And in fact, to the day that Krause died, he and Jackson never spoke and never wanted to be around each other. And to think that they put together, which is arguably one of the finest sports dynasties of the 80s and the 90s, it's really too bad that had to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I guess I look at it and I suppose it's been going on since the start of sports, but the whole fact about how to work with egos, and you got lots of egos and how to make them all play out. And basketball, you're only working with 12 or 15, but you get to a baseball team that's got 25, 26. You get to a football team that's got 50 or 60, and you're dealing with those egos and finding out how to balance them. And Jackson went from Chicago to Los Angeles and did the same kind of stuff. He got these teams with these great players, and he learned he could coach those great players and all.
Oh, he was a fantastic coach. Yeah, he was a great coach, and Krause pulled him up. I'm not sure Krause knew that he was going to be a Hall of Fame coach, but he became one anyway. And and so he was able to patch that team together. But there were a ton of egos on that team, no doubt about it.
I did like the part about Jackson and him coming from Montana and the Native American part of it and how he brought that into his coaching. I found that part of it. I think, to be honest with you, that's really like when I turned it over, that they were kind of talking about all that, and that kind of sucked me in, because I guess we're still, you and I are both coaches at heart, and to hear him talk about those kinds of things, and that the guys seemed to buy into a lot of what he was talking about.
He said one time, he said a poem before the game. Los Angeles Lakers, the strength of the wolf is the pack. The strength of the pack is the wolf. Yeah. And it's just like, and I mean, you feed this to, and I mean, those guys are sitting there. I don't know if they were wondering, what's this guy talking about? But the fact of it is what a line to say before a game.
He had him. Now I might be more intrigued by what's coming up this next Sunday now, when they start the story on Lance Armstrong, because he fought and fought and fought that he didn't dope, he didn't take anything, he whatever, when he was winning all of it. And of course they've been doing the commercials and everything else, and they basically asked him after cancer, was it easy to take EPO? Yeah. And he just like, there it is, it's so I'm intrigued, because of course that was a pretty big story for a lot of years, and everybody thought, well, he's doing this because he's got the will of whatever inside of him, and we found out.
You remember, you'd watch him climb those mountains, and he'd climb and he'd climb and climb, and nobody could even come close to keeping up with him. How's he going to do when he gets to flat line? He doesn't worry about that. Why? Because he's the best climber in the world. Well, now we kind of know what contributed to that, and that's a downfall of what he did. He did a lot of damage to the cycling world.
Oh, yeah, and that's the one thing.
Although he's not the only one.
That's what I'm saying. I was going to say it's just too bad, because if things would have been done the right way, just think what they could have capitalized on and what they had going. But it's too bad that things are going that way.
Well, you're right about one thing. It is going to be a very interesting story, because again, here is another character in sports. You couldn't make Lance Armstrong up. He is for real, and it's that's kind of where that is.
So did you watch any live sports on Sunday? Did you watch NASCAR or golf?
I watched some NASCAR, and I caught the tail end of it and watched the winner. I can't remember his name now, spinning around in the circle, to which the crowd would scream, except there was no crowd. And so, but it didn't stop him from making a lot of smoke and squirreling around in the circle. So, and it was a bizarre situation to see, especially NASCAR, because they can really fill those stands up. There's a lot of people there.
Absolutely. I guess maybe the most interesting thing that maybe I found out on Monday was that the announcers weren't at the track. They were watching it. They were watching it on a screen just like we were, and they were commenting on it. And I thought, wow, they made it sound pretty doggone real.
Well, that's right. But it's kind of like when you watch the movie Bull Durham, and the radio announcers are getting a ticker tape from the town across state, and he's got a bat and he whaps the bat. Hey, got a single on there, and he strapped it left for a double, and so yeah, no, that's the way to do it. You are telling a story, my friend. That's for sure.
Exactly. So I did watch a little NASCAR. I tried to watch the golf, but I don't mind listening to the players a little bit, but that's kind of like all it was, and I couldn't do it.
They're experimenting, and I remember a number of years ago, the television stations tried to broadcast football games with no announcers. You remember that?
I do remember.
And that lasted, maybe 2 gagames?
2 games.
It wasn't very long, and well, because there's a lot going on, and you want some direction, and so so that really never kind of worked that well. But it's
like I said, the golf, there was, I guess, for me, maybe the big time golfers, the guys who whack it around and go golf 6, 7 times a week, maybe they enjoyed it, but I just felt like it was too much banter, too much whatever. I'm glad that they had them mic'd up. I understand why they did it, but at the same time, it seemed not orchestrated. It seemed like they were maybe embellishing a little bit, because that's not the way. Well, of course, they were just playing for charities too, so it was a little less.
You've seen a couple of those Skins games in which they're actually pretty good, but there's no people around. I think they're just kind of learning how to do this, and golf and NASCAR, they're coming into their seasons. If the NHL and Major League Baseball can figure this out, the NBA, they figure they're coming back on the court before this year is done.
Hockey said today that they're basically thinking that they've got it down to 8 or 9 sites, and that they're going to play multiple games per day at these sites. 24-team playoff. I mean, this is getting pretty serious, and they were saying, the Texas, California, and New York governors all said that they could start playing games with no people, but they could start playing games in their states. They had a stat on ESPN this morning. 27% of the major league teams, the four major sports, 27% of the teams are in California, Texas, and New York. And I started thinking about it. I'm like,
that's true. Look,
that seems like a crazy number. But
well, it is. You know what I mean? They all have 2 or 3 football teams, or 2 or 3 baseball teams, and everybody's got Texas and California heavy deep into hockey. You bet.
Yeah. So, like I said, I guess it's going to be more of a reality that this is going to happen, and that it's going to happen without people in the stands. I think that's a very good possibility. But like I said, they've got it figured out, and I think the college sports are going to figure it out off of what the pro teams do and how to keep people safer, yes. And everything else. And I found it very interesting. They were talking this morning that universities are talking about going back early. And I'm kind of like,
Notre Dame,
why would they go back early? Well, the idea is that they would be done with fall semester before Thanksgiving, which is big flu season, and then they would be out until January. So they'd miss that 7-8 week window where the flu is so bad, and everybody can go back home and do their thing. And I'm kind of like, that has some merit. If you're going to open up your university, that seems to be the way to do it. So that means to me that they're going to have people going to universities and colleges, and that means there's going to be a football season.
I'll tell you what, I don't think they can turn their back on the billions of dollars that college football generates, not to mention pro football.
Are we ever going to get to the day, George, when we say trillions of dollars produced by college and pro football?
I don't know. I mean, that's just, I remember
a trillion is 1,000 billion. I understand that, but we say billions and billions, and there's a lot of money out there.
It goes on, but Everett Dirksen one time said in the 60s, $1 million here, $1 million there. Pretty soon you're talking real money. While you change from million to billion, and that's the way it goes now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not sure just how much money that is, of course, but I'm still working on the hundreds.
I was going to say we're still working in the thousands.
Yeah.
And those millions. So, What else you got?
Listen, I got one question. I've got some things down here. Like, did you know that Michael Jordan's shoes went for $560,000, and they were used, Tim? They were used shoes. They weren't even new.
I wouldn't have paid 560 if Mike hadn't put them on his feet. So.
No, I know. And so I always thought, whatever, not to go back to Jordan, but boy, I'll tell you what, he had a certain charisma, and the fans loved him. And it's I mean, he knew about branding, he knew about marketing, he knew about basketball. He made a lot of money, and people say, well, he didn't do this or he didn't do that. No, but I'll tell you what, he was a pretty successful businessman. No two ways about it, and still is.
Yeah, absolutely. They talked about the rise of the NBA, and of course, Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson and Bird had a lot to do with that in the 80s and everything else. And Jordan was the vehicle that drove it into the 90s and took it to where it is. And it's something that personally I don't watch a lot of the NBA, but I understand why people do. I mean, the athleticism and everything else is pretty phenomenal.
It really is.
So
I got a football question for you, Tim.
Okay.
And I've been kind of knocking this around. Where's Cam Newton going to go?
Ooh.
He's got this great talent. He's big. He's incredibly strong. He can do all these things. He's got no football team.
He is going to find that he is not going to get the type of dollars that he thinks, and this is my opinion now, that I think he thinks he's worth. I think they're hoping for, I'll pick a number, 6, 7, 8 million. He lost too many games. He has shown that his shoulder, he doesn't have the arm strength to throw the passes like he needs to in the NFL. So he's probably not going to get a chance to start someplace. So he's going to have to go be a backup somewhere. And he's probably going to have to do it for 2-3 million, which is way below what he thinks he's worth. In all reality, might be worth. I mean, somebody might get a bargain because sure as God made little green apples, that's my saying. A starting quarterback is going to get hurt, and somebody's going to need a quarterback, and then he's going to be in the driver's seat on getting to pick. Well, okay, what's it worth to you for me to come back? Because now the ball's in my court. So he needs to be patient. I don't think there's any reason to start getting concerned until about September 1st, because that he's out there working, he's out there throwing, doing the things that he needs to do to be ready. And sure, it'd be nice if he was in a training camp working with the receivers, but if nothing we've learned from the past few years is that preseason games are meaningless to these players. They don't play, but a series or two, and they want to be ready to go, and they'll get ready as the season rolls along. So if I'm Cam Newton, I'm not getting nervous. If I'm his agent, I'm not getting nervous because the NFL is going to say, okay, we'll wait. And then September 30th, John Q quarterback is going to go down for the whoever, and somebody's going to be going, what are we going to do now? We only got one quarterback left over. What has anybody got Cam's number? Let's get Cam's agent on the phone. Let's do this, and let's get Cam in here, and let's see if his arm is any good. So, and then he's going to be able to say, look, you waited. Now make me 5-6 million. So, to me, patience.
Well, the other guy that I saw in video the other day was Ben Roethlisberger, and Big Ben is back, and he has an incredible arm. Elbow's been all rebuilt, and he is shooting bullets. And so he had a couple of receivers out there were catching, and they were just walking back saying Ben is back. It's kind of like you watch the quarterback situation. A lot of young quarterbacks, a lot of talented young quarterbacks. But sometimes, every once in a while, and I'm thinking about both Cam and Big Ben, kind of a Jim Plunkett type deal. And Plunkett came back and he made all his hits long after he was over the hill and useless. And it's just like, so sometimes these tough old shirts, they come back and they wear well. And I kind of think geez, I thought, Ben's got to give it up. He's been doing around for a long time. I don't think it's going to be this year.
Well, and think about the body, the not having that pounding for a season.
Yes.
And again, I think that's where Cam Newton. Okay, you're not getting hit during preseason games, blah blah blah. And like I said, you get a chance to rest your body, and all of a sudden you can do things a whole lot better than you could before.
Yeah, that's right.
What else you got?
Listen, I've got a story.
You're a good storyteller, George.
Well, this actually required some research.
Is it a true story?
Or yes, it is. No, it isn't. It is a true story. But I said, I even have a title for it. Whatever happened to the backup quarterback for the Broncos in 1983? Okay, so 1983, the Broncos had a great potential team. Eddie Barr was on this team. Wayne Roberts was on this team. Numerous other names that I should spew out, but I'd have to go check it out. And they had a good team, and they're playing Duluth Cathedral first game, and they're playing pretty well. And all of a sudden, Wayne Roberts goes down with a busted ankle, so he's done for the season. So who do you get? Well, Nordquist recruited somebody off the basketball team, and Nordy at the time was assistant coach to Stan Johnson, and so they had this guy, Chris Boker. So Chris didn't play much football, but he had a bag of tools, and he had great hands and great feet and a super head, which, as Stuart will tell you, that was always the best thing. And so they put him in, and the first thing he does is protects the football. Wow, that's nice. And a quarterback that hasn't played the game very much. And what did he do? He made decisions. They beat Greenway during that game, during that season, 14-12. And Stuart was telling the story. There was a small rollout pass, and the receiver was wide open. And Chris Bokers didn't give him the football. And he comes over on the sidelines and says, "Why didn't you throw him the football?" And he says, "I didn't have a very good grip, coach." Well, that's about the best explanation you can have from that circumstance, because you have a lousy grip, you know what's going to happen to that ball. And so Chris had that kind of sports mentality. He was a point guard for a very good basketball team. How did that team do? They were 7-2 and Mesabi Range champions.
Absolutely.
They lost to Cloquet 21-7 early in the year, and they lost to Cloquet in the finals to go to state by the same score, 21-7. So those are the only things. So Chris quarterbacked this team to a 7-2 record essentially, and in my mind, all the years I've been up here, that was as good a coming off the bench act that I'd seen. So I want to talk about that. Hey, nobody's ever forgot about this. And Stuart would talk about just how good of a kid he was, how coachable a kid he was. And there's a point to my story. He went to St. John's, and then from there he went over to North Dakota, and from there he went to work for the FBI. And for the FBI, he was in charge of murder crimes and such. He was instrumental in his team in figuring out the Jacob Wetterling case and things like that. He worked out of Minneapolis, and he was a top shelf special agent FBI type guy, and you can just see him working because he's one of the kids where every once in a while you run into kids and you think, geez, if I was only half as smart as this kid, I'd be all right. And so, but Chris had that way of doing it. So he spent 20 years working for the FBI, but since he retired, he went to work for the United States Attorney's Office. Last week, he was appointed as the coordinator for missing and murdered Indigenous persons for the District of Minnesota. There's 11 people that have this job, and one of them is Chris Bokers. He has at this point in time one heavy-duty cop job. And you know, and I know the Broncos have turned out lawyers, doctors, politicians. I mean, they've turned out an awful lot of quality people, and we don't talk about them too much. But there's Chris Bokers, and so he's gonna take over this job. He's got Chris and his wife Nancy have two really talented kids. One is a Division I hockey player, a girl, and the boy goes to school at the U somewhere. But this family is a very extraordinary American family. Chris is the son of Shirley and Dutch Bokers here in town, and I don't know. I didn't talk to him. That I say that I was going to bring this up, but I'll tell you, some kids reach for the standards set by Gophers or by Broncos that come before him. Chris set the standard. He lifted the bar, and the rest of us strive for the bar. And Chris lifted it, and he's continually doing that. So I just want to congratulate Chris and his family, and Dutch and Shirley and his sister Carol. He's a mighty fine man, and that's the kind of man that we like to see Broncos turn out, and indeed, he's a good one.
Absolutely.
So that's my story about Chris Bokers.
Well done. Well
thank
said.
you.
Should we talk about one of his teammates, possibly classmates? Because I'm not sure which year Chris graduated from high school.
He graduated 84.
Okay, well, and I think we're going to talk about one of his classmates next, because we've got a new head boys basketball coach for the Broncos.
I heard that.
And Donnie Rolando taking over. So congratulations to Duck, as he's known amongst his family members. And I know he hemmed and hawed for a few years. The job has come open a few times since he's been back in the Falls. And, of course, you know, he was at Cook County and took the Vikings to state. I think it was in 2002 or 3. I think is what it was.
Very successful season.
And then, of course, came here to Rainy River and was the head coach for the men's team for many years. And then now finally going to get to fill his father's shoes, who Jim was in for, I believe, 11 seasons. And so we'll see how Donnie does.
Hall of Fame coach.
Hall of Fame coach. And we'll see what Mr. Rolando can do with that new position. And the coaching turnover, I don't think we've talked about this before, but man, it's the number of new Bronco coaches is quite high. And so kids can look at that as a positive or a negative. You know, change is always tough. But, you know, new coaches, new different ways of doing things. Like I said, you talk about Amos McKenzie to Donnie Rolando. Are they the same character? No. Do they have a lot of the same things going on? Sure. I think those things are there. I think about Eric Walls, Phil Talmadge. Well, Phil didn't get to show what he wanted to do on the baseball field as a head coach this year. But again, a couple of guys that some of the same things. They've worked together and done things. You know, we're looking at the new boys head hockey coach. Got a couple of candidates out there right here. You can get the rumor mill started and everything else. And
not hard to do that for hockey.
And so I would assume that by June school board meeting, we'll know who that new boys coach is. And of course, see that we're looking for a volleyball coach for the fall. And we've got a new head coach in football with Seth Edestead, who just got approved here a couple of months back. And so we got this new energy. And of course that brings uncertainty, but it also brings new possibilities.
Oh, it sure does.
I hope the kids embrace that change. I know it's tough for them. You'd like to stay with the same person. You learn to love your coach, or in some cases you really get to learn to dislike the coach. And sometimes new blood is good, and sometimes new blood is bad. And so it's one of those things where I see positives and negatives. And like I said, Donnie brings a lot of experience coaching. And of course, I'm sure his father is thrilled beyond his whatever to think that his son is taking the helm of a position that he held almost all of the 70s here for International Falls.
No, I tell you what, he'll be watching a lot of basketball games, whether it's at home or in the gym. But Yeah, I remember coaching, and I'd look up on the top shelf, and there would be Nordquist, Rolando, and actually you. And the three of them up there, I said, I wonder what they're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there were some judgments along the way.
Oh, I would have been disappointed had there not been.
Well, that's the thing about, coaches, and some coaches can't handle that.
I know.
That there are coaches sitting up in the stands second guessing them. Well, geez, you got parents, you got grandparents, you got everybody's up there second guessing you. When you're the head coach, you don't know nothing about anything. So it's a tough spot to be in, and only the tough can handle it. It really is. You got to go into it with the right skin thickness and know how to deal with people, because everybody, just like a lot of jobs out there, everybody thinks that they can be a head coach. Everybody thinks they could be the president of the United States. Everybody thinks they could drive a school bus, whatever. And until you go out there and do it, it's tough to say that you get the right to complain about it.
When I first took over as head wrestling coach, I got a piece of advice from Larry Ross, and he says, Coach, sometimes you've got to be the jerk. And it was like, you don't want it to be, you don't want to make these decisions, but sometimes the decision comes right down to you. And that was always the most difficult decision that I ever made coaching. And I had to play some kids or wrestle some kids and broke the heart of some others. And that seems to be an issue with coaching, and you have to be able to live with that and live with it well.
Absolutely. And I know they were talking about going back to the Jordan thing, and they were asking one of his teammates, who's a head coach at South Connecticut State or someplace, and I don't even remember what his name is. I think Burrell, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think Burrell.
But they were talking about, could you have a player like Michael Jordan on your team today? And he said, absolutely not. There's no way. Kids have been coddled, AAU, everything else. They would not deal with it. They can, if the situation isn't right, they just leave. Right? I mean, that's what we've been complaining. I shouldn't say we. I've been complaining about on this show for months, about the openness of being able to just, well, if you get into a controversy with somebody, you just get up and leave. You don't deal with it. You don't try to make the situation better. You just divorce yourself from the situation. And I guess you live with somebody long enough, wives, children, brothers and sisters, you're going to get ticked off at them, and you got to make a decision whether you're going to live with them or you're not going to live with them. And like I said, sometimes I feel like we give up too soon on certain things. And like I said, there's going to be tough times, and sometimes staying is tougher in the long run, but you learn more in the long run as well.
No, we're all getting a little bit stir crazy after a while. I mean, they call it cabin fever. We all want a game to start. We're all sitting around wondering, is this for real? Well, it's been for real for 2.5, 3 months now. And so we have to take a look at this realistically and say, here, this is what we're going to, like I say, this is something that we can all handle. I feel bad because of the timing for the kids. I really do. I really do hurt for the kids. Maybe next week we could spend a few minutes talking about seniors. You know all these people, and just spend a little time talking about that. But Tim, I've got another story to tell. This is the second hole-in-one story that I've seen this year. The first one was Rich Rudd over here. Oh. He dropped one in, right after the snowbank was gone.
Yeah.
No, but yesterday at the Bemidji Golf Course, a 9-year-old, soon to be 10-year-old, scored a hole-in-one on the 5th hole using a driver.
Was his last name Frake?
Alex Frake. Good guess. He's a 4th grader over at Phillips Elementary School. That's Jennifer and Robert's Frake's son, and George and Sue Frake's grandson. But, he got his first hole-in-one. He's 9 years old. Where does he go from here?
That's a great question. I guess a second hole in one. Why not?
Yeah, no, you've never known a good hockey player that couldn't carry a bag of sticks too. And so, this is kind of what they got on. But Sue came in this afternoon as I'm writing up the script. She says, I have some sports for you. So
you gotta have a beat writer. You got to get out there and have somebody beat the pavement to get those stories for you.
You do, yeah. That's the one thing I have. But like I said, we're coming on Memorial Day. Springtime's out there. People are, like I say, getting restless, and we talk about hard times, and we're all going through hard times. But you know me, I like a little history now and again.
A little.
A little. On Sunday, on the History Channel, they're going to run a 3-part miniseries on Ulysses S. Grant. And if anybody wants to sit down and put history in a proper perspective, I'm reading a book on it right now, and I'm actually going to put the book away for a couple of days while I watch this show. And but that's on, and so there's some things. So I'm looking forward to the Grant miniseries. I heard it's going to be fantastic. Leonardo DiCaprio is producing it and directing it. So this is no schmuck deal. So if you, and I'm always ready to throw out a soundbite for history.
Yeah, and of course we should thank all our veterans for Memorial Day. That's coming up. I know tradition for me is to head home and take part in a couple of cemeteries where my grandparents were at, and many of the guys that I knew who had served in the wars. And so I know it's going to be very limited this year, which is disappointing. But again, thanks to all those guys out there for doing what they did, so that we can do what we do here. And Memorial Day has a special place in my heart of the days that we get off. I think obviously the 4th of July and these other ones, but Memorial Day always was always an important one to our family. We had a cemetery that our property kind of encircled. We were kind of in charge of that cemetery. So that was always a big deal to us. And from the time we were little, we learned the importance of Memorial Day and making sure the flags were in the right places and the cemetery looked good and everything was trimmed up and all that other stuff. So it's a big day. I know for a lot of people, it's a chance to get an extra day of fishing, an extra day of camping. And but for me, it was always a day that you went to the cemeteries and did that first. And then you got together and you had a barbecue or something and took care of business. So again, thanks to all the veterans out there.
For sure.
So, anything else?
What else you got?
That's about everything. I did see something on this morning about when the NBA was having their lockout in 2011. LeBron was thinking about going and playing football for the Dallas Cowboys, and I thought, wow, yeah, I thought he might have been a better football player than he was a basketball player. I thought, man, what a tight end, 6'9", jump out of the building, throw him the ball. Rob Gronkowski would look like nothing compared to LeBron James.
A tight end, a slot back, a split end, put him anywhere you wanna.
They were talking that what a defensive end he might have made.
Ooh.
With that leaping ability, you would not have been able to throw the ball to his side of the field because the span and the width, and you wouldn't have been able to throw the ball around him. So.
Isn't he too tall to play that position? Oh, that's been discussed, I guess.
Yeah, Ed Too Tall Jones.
Yeah, he did all right.
6'9", not too bad. He
Can you imagine trying to block that coming at you? Of course, Too Tall Jones is a Hall of Famer, and he came hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's those guys, like I said, you come with that head slap right up along the old ear, and yeah. So
no, I still have a problem with my left ear, and that's Neil Ladston down at UMD. He come across and he was an all-conference, not an all-American defensive end, and it hurt. I'm telling you, and especially when it was cold, he'd slap that sucker. I had to do a couple of different things for that, but stuff.
Yeah, that's everything I got. So
okay, well, those are all the stories that I have. I don't know how much time did we use up.
Oh, we're nearing 45 minutes.
Are we? Well, fantastic.
Yeah, okay, somehow without anything, we managed to fill an almost an hour slot again for Darcy.
Darcy is just tickled pink. She thinks we can talk forever about nothing.
Well, we apparently have shown that we can do it once again. I don't know where this stuff comes from, but
I wouldn't do this if I wasn't having so much fun, but here we are.
Well, all right. Well, we'll do this again next week, and again we will talk about graduates next week. That's a good idea. We could talk about some of the highlights of those kids, the guys and gals over the last year, of those seniors that are graduating, and so that would be a good way to send the kids off.
I think so.
All right, George, have a great week. Everybody else, have a great week.
Thank you. And you, everybody out there, stay safe, for crying out loud. Stay safe. We don't have that many watchers. We got to keep you on.